All right, welcome back, Chelsea fans, to another episode of the London is Blue podcast. I, of course, am Nick, your third choice host with the most, joined by our good friend NIZAAR KINSELLA. What's going on, man?
Yeah, not bad. Thought it would be quiet after the season, but hey, it's not, is it? But yeah, it's all good. I'm looking at the list that we've got to talk through today, and I'm a little bit daunted actually, but let's go for it.
Let's go for it. Just like going to a rock concert and expecting it to be quiet. That's Chelsea Football Club. Just doing everything they can to break news every moment of every day, which is where we are. So, look, in this newly titled Nick and Naz special, we are going to talk through everything with Pochettino, some key hires at the board level, and then, of course, your transfer outgoings and incomings, just to make sure that we cover off on the entire men's first team apparatus. So, like you guys know the deal, get in on Patreon, get in on Apple Podcasts, do the 5-star reviews, and of course get in on Spotify. We're careening towards 3,000 5-star reviews on that platform. So do what you can. No time to waste though, Naz. We have to get in. Pochettino finally, after what seems like 6 or 8 months of speculation, is finally hired. The announcement made on Monday, the day after the season ends. You know, obviously Lampard's tenure coming to a close, and I think probably more out of respect than anything else, they waited until the season was over to make the announcement. You reporting that he's going to bring Jesus Perez, Miguel D'Agostino, Tony Jimenez, and Sebastian Pochettino with him as well. And they face a hell of a lot of challenges, including fitness issues, a lack of functioning attacking structure. There's maybe some work to do on repairing squad harmony, and then reuniting the club, and that, of course, includes the fans as a part of that. So take dealer's choice. Where do you want to start within the Pochettino hiring? Obviously, I think you and I have talked previously. It's a good move. Just how good of a move is it?
Yeah, I think it's the best move. I wrote very early on in the process, before they sort of narrowed down to Mauricio Pochettino, that I thought he was the best one. And at the time, it felt like Nagelsmann, Julian Nagelsmann, was the first choice. And that's a bit of a touchy issue, actually. Was Pochettino really the first choice, or was it Nagelsmann? If you listen to Nagelsmann people, they insist they were, and Pochettino's people insist that he was. So you kind of get that situation. But I always thought Pochettino was better because of the Premier League experience, especially. And I think that the Spurs job, when he arrived into it, was similar. It was a club building exercise as well. You look at them, they've built the stadium, Tottenham. Of course, they didn't win a trophy, but hopefully Chelsea will rub off on Mauricio rather than the other way around. You know, maybe that's the issue. Tottenham don't win trophies under many managers. So hopefully that will help. But yeah, I mean, even his experience with PSG as well, a bit of a chaotic club. I mean, we all would like Chelsea to be a bit more stable and you know, moving forward at the minute, but right at this very moment in time, it's chaotic, difficult, and repairing squad harmony as well. If you can keep Mbappe and Neymar inside, then you could probably do whatever needs to be done at Chelsea right now. So there's a lot of like sort of positives there, I think, and I think that Chelsea should be very happy with the man they've got. And I wrote as well this week, just before I went away. I wrote that Pochettino sort of coming in, it kind of is a good reflection on Chelsea as well, because he didn't have to take this job. He will get other offers, other good offers. So he could have sat tight. He could have waited. Real Madrid might become available soon as well. And he could have waited for those kind of jobs. But no, he's gone and accepted Chelsea. So he must see enough there in the project. And of course, it's been a dreadful season, but he must see enough there that there is stuff to work with. So I think that it goes two ways. And I think that it reflects well on Chelsea. They got it done and they handled it in a good way, let Lampard have his send-off and all that. So, yeah, he's not officially joining until July the 1st, is he? So it's one of those things where officially he's not joining until July the 1st. That's why we didn't get the contract signing photo or Mauricio in his gear, the Chelsea gear yet. But that's coming on July the 1st. But unofficially, of course, work has started. And you look at the list we've got to talk through here, Nick, and I think that it has Mauricio Pochettino's footprint all over it. And I think that is why it's been a busy week, is because the season has ended, Lampard's gone, Pochettino's in. So that's why everything's happening now.
Can I quickly ask, what is with the month gap, essentially, from when he signs his contract to when he can officially start working? What's the deal behind that?
It's related to just contractual issues to PSG. So they'll have had a gardening leave where he's entitled, I guess, to a payout if he sort of sees out a period of inactivity. So I think that's how it's working, is that he's just sort of got to be inactive for a little while and allow the PSG thing to run out. So this kind of thing can happen when you get sacked if you're hoping for a payout and things like that. So I think that's where it lies, really.
Do you think that you or I could get the similar gardening leave to not work for 8 months and collect a huge check at the end of it? That would be kind of fun, right?
Oh, yeah. And Maurizio is going to be very rested, hopefully, by the end of the even if he is deciding things from afar at Chelsea.
Look, it's going to be a busy summer for him, regardless of if he's official or unofficial. You mentioned that he's on his way to already making impact within the squad. We're going to get to the transfer stuff in a bit, but I think I will touch on two important ones before we dive into that section. You said among his top priorities will be determining the futures of out-of-contract N'Golo Kante and Mason Mount. Both have, contract issues of their own that they're going through, well documented at this point. And you also mentioned that he's expected to hold talks with the outgoing interim manager, Frank Lampard, who's been critical of the players, saying standards of drops, all that sort of stuff. So there is work happening behind the scenes, even if it is a little cosmetic in nature, right? But let's talk about the contracts of those two. I mean, obviously crucial components of Chelsea Football Club and N'Golo Kante and Mason Mount. Lots of reporting this morning that and yesterday that Mason's agreed terms with Manchester United. Lots of reporting around what has gone wrong with his contract negotiations over the last year, not just in the last few days. Anything that you want to add on that and what Pochettino hopes he can do with Mason Mount in particular?
Well, I think the news that's quite shocking, I think, for Chelsea fans to hear is that he's agreed personal terms with Man United. And I think Man United fans are probably very excited about that as well. But I think that we can get carried away by this piece of news. We see it time and again, and it doesn't mean that a fee's been agreed. And that is the hardest part here. Chelsea doing a deal with Man United for a big player. It's fraught with emotion. It's fraught with public relations. It's fraught with a lot of pressure, I think, on both sides, really. So I think it's still kind of early because the fee is the hardest part. And I think for Mason, that's going to be the issue. So personal terms, yeah, I mean, it's going to be clear. Like, if he can't agree personal terms with Chelsea, there is going to be a big club going to do it. And I thought it would be Liverpool or Man United. It turns out it's Man United. And now let's see if a deal can be agreed and how much it will be and how people feel about it. I think that that in this case, of all the transfer related issues that Chelsea have, this is the one that has emotion, because we know that Mason Mount is very connected to Chelsea. I was there at the last game of the season against Newcastle, and I recorded that video, and it kind of went viral of Mason's last moments on Stamford Bridge, and you could see it said a lot, didn't it? That video, it said that, to me anyway, and I've seen this guy throughout his career. I've seen him since he was 16 years old in the under 18s, and I know, it's not by me just saying it. I've seen it with my eyes that he loves Chelsea. So looking at how he behaved there, I saw that there was love, maybe heartbreak, and maybe it was goodbye. It's the kind of goodbye you say when you break up with like your partner or something. It really felt like that touching. We've all seen it. So I think that's why the video went viral. I think that a lot of Chelsea fans saw it as like a goodbye, and a lot of fans of other clubs were like dreaming that he joined their club. So I think that it says a lot. I think that Man United are in pole position, but they've still got to do the hardest part, which is get that deal agreed. But for me, it is going to happen.
Two questions. Do you think that Pochettino has any sway in this situation when it comes to what the sporting directors do if they do make another different offer? And two, play out the worst case scenario as you just did. How big of a loss is this for Chelsea Football Club, and what does it say about the club to lose a guy like Mason Mount if that does happen? And I'm saying if.
Yeah, it might be too late for Pochettino. I hope he can maybe sway him, Mason. But I think that what the emotion that's kind of shown in that video is kind of how it feels behind the scenes as well. That it does feel like it's goodbye. It feels like you're gonna have to massively change the course of like this massive super tanker. You're gonna have to get the captain at the wheel who completely turns it around. So and then you've got to get the club all behind you. You've got to get an offer on the table, and it just doesn't feel like that is going to happen. I don't even know. There is a question about do Chelsea even have the appetite to really push for it, or that many pressures. You know, Mason Mount can solve problems financially for you. One big sale of a player, and then you're in a really strong position to buy players, even though you've got some financial fair play on your back, losses, 600 million spent in the last two transfer windows, but a big Mason Mount sale, it's sort of like, oh, here we go again. And you're in a strong position. So maybe he's the fall guy. Maybe he is just the guy that, you don't really want to sell, but on a one-off basis, it can lift you back up again financially. And then hopefully you can find a replacement. And I think that in business terms, I think that Chelsea feel like they could replace Mason Mount, and that's probably why does it feel as wanted and why it can be renewed, because it feels like he's replaceable. Whereas when Reece James had a contract situation, it was like, here's a huge salary, you're irreplaceable. So that's kind of how it feels to me around Mason. But I don't really agree. I think it is a big loss. I think when we're talking about what went wrong with Chelsea, on Pochettino's to-do list, I think that a lot of what was lost as well was like club culture in the dressing room and stuff. And I think he brings that. And if you're going to lose other big players as well this summer, like Mason is the kind of, I think he's a leader. I think he always captained the team at youth level. He loved Chelsea. He's a great professional. Yes, he's a 7 out of 10 most weeks, but not a 10 out of 10. But I think that says a lot about his professionalism. And I think it rubs off on other people. And if you work like that every day, you get rewards. So I think that's the club culture Chelsea lost. I mean, it's no secret the training level dropped off hugely, and Mount wasn't in training for a lot of the last few months of the season. So I think that there are those kind of things that are a bit of a loss. I think for Chelsea and potentially Man United, he's that sort of second creator that you'd have. So you still want another creator in the team, but he's kind of like the Eriksen that Man United have. I think that's what they see him as. So they'd have Bruno and him can be on the pitch together because Mason does loads of defensive work. And I think that that's why some people don't like him. Some Chelsea fans don't like Mason Mount, some England fans. And I think because they don't really understand that there's two parts of his game. He's a more rounded midfielder. He's not your overpowered creator like Bruno Fernandes, like Phil Foden. He is the second creator who does the dogged defensive work as well. So I think if you're in a team like that with Mason, then he can make a great impact. And I think that's what Chelsea lose on the pitch. But I think off the pitch, they lose a lot as well.
Yeah, hopefully that situation changes. I think it would be an absolute mishap of massive proportions to let someone like that go, despite the financial situation. So
the other thing is, I don't think Chelsea have lost a player of this caliber for a while. They have sold to rivals before, but it's always players who are kind of on the fringes who are good, but on the fringes, Mata, Matic to Man United. They sold a few to Spurs and Arsenal down the years as well. But this is one where you're like, he's a key player. We're selling a key player to a big club, and that's just in England it's happened with Hazard to Real Madrid, but it's not happened really, I don't think, for a very, very long time within the English football.
Yep. Is there any more thoughts on Pochettino before we move to the next section?
Yeah, it's just going to be a hell of a job. Like it's going to be quite interesting what emerges, and I'm coming to America with you boys, and I think that that's going to be a period where we really learn a lot. But it's quite interesting to see what the expectations will be on him. I want to learn about that. Do Chelsea want top four? Do they want top six? How are they going to approach next season? Yeah, and yeah, it's going to be interesting to see sort of what he can do, how many players are out, and he's selling players before he's even looking at them now. So that's quite interesting as well. You know, Kovacic, Mount, people like that. The decisions are being made from him without even looking at them in training, which is tough. I think that's really tough, and it'll be interesting to see what he thinks about it when I can finally meet him.
There you go. All right, let's take a quick ad break. We're going to get stuck in on some of the executive level stuff here in a second, and then we'll, of course, get to all the transfer stuff. So just hold on. Lots to cover. We'll be right back. Thanks to the sponsors. All right, Naz, before we get into the players, just a couple of updates from board level. Chelsea announced a new CEO, Chris Jurasic, as the chief executive officer, replacing Tom Glick, who is expected to depart. Has an ongoing kind of investigation happening with him. And then I think from what I'm able to understand from your article, it seems like Jurasic has come in more on the business side to try and kickstart some of the business operations pieces, like the sponsorship issue that we have right now on our shirt deal that's expired with 3. So any more insight into Jurasic and why the title was created to be CEO instead of president of business operations? You let me know.
No, I think Tom steps aside because of this appointment, or it seems like that. You could draw 2 and 2. The investigation's been finished into Tom Glick, and there's no suggestion that's the reason he's left. But we'll see if anything more emerges on that front. But yeah, Chelsea have sort of released officially that this is happening. They've changed it back to CEO, which is a more conventional title. Yeah. I'm not sure why, but it very much, when you read through the sort of list of responsibilities for Jurasic, it's very much the same as what Tom Glick's were. So it's everything not to do with football, and that stuff is important. The Chelsea need to get the marketing department right, get the stuff, get the sponsors on the shirt. There's a new sponsor coming on Chelsea's shirt. A few rumours about what it could be, but we'll definitely find out about that very soon. I think that you need to get that right before the kit launch, don't you? So we're waiting for that. And yeah, I think that's sort of where his responsibilities lie. There's quite a lot of work to do on that front as well. The marketing department is, there's been a bit of controversy behind that as well. New York Times have reported heavily on some of the issues there, allegations of bullying and things like that. And there's like a temporary firm consultancy helping with Chelsea's marketing right now. You'd think they'd want to get that in-house very quickly. So there's a lot to do there. This guy who they brought in as well, Jurasic, he's from Clear Lake Capital, so it's a case of Chelsea know him, they know what he's all about, so hopefully they know what he can do, because he's kind of coming from one business in their sort of structure into another one, so they must know what he can do, and he must be able to work with the board on what the board wants to achieve.
You'd sure hope so, right? If you hire one of your own, it'd be nice to have a little bit of operational efficiency there. That'd be great. The other thing that was reported this week by The Athletic, I'm not sure if you have anything on this, Naz, is Chelsea are set to appoint Stoke City's Andy Cousins in a senior recruitment and scouting position. Obviously, they say he comes highly regarded and that there's a need for this sort of role within Chelsea. Anything that you have on this? Because my gut was telling me this is what Shields was kind of doing at the board level.
I think they're just adding another one to complement the bigger picture. You've got to remember Chelsea are going to expand to monumental levels now. Mm-hmm. Club model, which kind of lingers on in the background. They're still in negotiations with Strasbourg as we speak, and it would be a major achievement to buy a club so soon, especially one in the French league, which is a key strategic position. Loads of rivals want those kind of clubs, so to get Strasbourg would be excellent. So you're getting as many of these scouts in to sort of create this system where you're feeding in, your Kendry Paises and all that into these smaller clubs. So I've also heard that there's no major structure change for Maurizio Pochettino, so I wouldn't read into it like it means that any of the other senior recruiters are not regarded or being demoted or even sacked. So it's just a case of adding more quality to the system. And the Man City guy coming in, it's always Man City guys. There's a lot of ex-Man City now at Chelsea, and there's a good reason for that, because they win and because they've done the multi-club thing very well.
Absolutely. I guess before we depart this section, I know we've talked about the stadium before. We've talked about the medical staff. Any other kind of at board level things that are on your radar that you're looking out for?
Yeah, I think that there might be small stadium updates, but I think end of the year is going to be the big one. And I think that, I'd like to see some clarity on the medical department. We'll see if we get that. I think it'd be good if Chelsea arrived back after American pre-season with a clear, better structure in place. I think even some staff are not certain about if they're going to be here next year in the medical department, things like that. It's been really bad. I mean, Chelsea ended the season with like 9 or 10 injuries again. So we kind of didn't really talk about it much because there was so much other stuff going on. But there was an injury crisis at the end of the year. Quite remarkable. They put in a good performance against Newcastle against that sort of backdrop. So, yeah, if Pochettino's to succeed, and this one might be out of his control, it probably need a calmer scenario in the medical department.
Is that a combination of incomings and outgoings with staff, or is it just making sure that there's like a baseline of fitness that the team has to achieve? What's that look like in your mind?
It's a bit of both, isn't it? You need the fitness, and they can handle that, and they've got great guys. I mean, his son Sebastiano, he's like a sports scientist, and Jesus Perez is a head of conditioning as well as an assistant coach who has technical ability. So. I think that they can handle that. But when you do get injuries, you need to get that side of it right. And do Chelsea have the people to do that? I mean, I'm still questioning it, and I'm sure some of the squad are. And I think that's a factor that some people believe is behind the bad season.
All right. Well, Strasbourg update is very interesting. Obviously, it's not the first priority in our heads as supporters, but obviously a crucial part of the business operation that could really elevate some of these loanees into a position where they feel more comfortable, and there's a actual plan for them to play. So how about that? Look, we're going to take our second ad break, and of course, we're going to come back and talk about the insane list of incomings and outgoings that we have here, plus a couple of other fun updates from the Under-20 World Cup. So thanks to the sponsors, and we'll be right back. As Naz alluded to, we are going to be on summer tour, and so we hope that you're coming to join us. We will be in Raleigh for the Wrexham game. We will be in Philly. We will be in Atlanta. We will be in DC. Those are the 4 locations that we're going to. Naz, we're going to set up some live shows and have some fun as we did last summer. Any thoughts on the summer tour and what you're excited to see besides Maurizio working his magic?
Yeah, I'm excited about the locations for myself personally, and then time with Maurizio. And I think that it's going to be more, and this might not be well known, but there's going to be more of a base in sort of Philly, and they're going to fly in and out to all these various locations. It's sort of like they do in the Champions League. They train at Cobham, then they go fly out, do 2 days there, and then come back. And I think that's how the preseason is going to look. So hopefully it gets around some of the problems they had last preseason, where they had 2 different training camps, cross-continental almost. It was grueling, and the weather's probably, better than me, but in Philly, I think it's still hot, but it's not quite Orlando, Florida, or.
No. It does. It's summer in the U.S., so it's going to be hot. It's going to be in the 90s. It'll be humid, but Orlando's a whole different animal. Vegas is a whole different animal, right? So, hopefully, knock on wood, a little bit more favorable terms this summer, but they're still playing 5 matches in the States. I mean, it's kind of a wild gambit to throw down, especially after the season we had.
Yeah, 5 matches, 5 states. It's still ambitious in terms of travel and stuff. So hopefully they get it right, mixing up the commercial, the promotion, meeting the fans in the different states. So great and valid thing to do, but you've got to make sure the sporting side is right, and I think that we all know that last summer it wasn't quite right. So I mean, I came back tired, and so did the players. So hopefully more restful for all of us. And the other thing is they're in a Premier League tournament as well, so that's going to be quite interesting playing against Fulham, Brighton, Newcastle. So that'll be pretty cool seeing them against sort of rivals you used to seeing them against, but in the States.
I think we were all a little worse for wear after a couple of pub stops at the end there, Nas. Look, outgoings, as we've talked about many a time on the show, and I think as you and Brennan covered off on last week, the most important part of Chelsea's year is trimming down this incredibly bloated squad. They did some of that work last summer. They have a lot more to do this summer, right? You've reported, many others have reported that Joao Felix and Denis Zakaria are not going to be retained. They're going to go back to Atletico and Juve, respectively, which is, I think, smart, right? You kind of think about the roles. Zakaria barely played this year, so that makes some sense. But think about the role and then the needs and requirements. Felix probably didn't fit the spending bill that was going to be required to keep him.
Yeah, I think Zakaria didn't get close to getting his Chelsea move, and that's not an insult on the player. I think he did really well and was a really great figure behind the scenes, and everything I heard about him was really positive, but just didn't get close. And then with Joao Felix, I think the club were quite interested in buying him. They were really into it, but Maurizio Pochettino wasn't as interested, and you've got to slim down the numbers anyway, then it's easy just to let the loanees go because, you might not achieve what you want to achieve in terms of player sales. So signing a player at this stage would have been a problem, essentially, especially in attack where there's a lot of players. So I think that was the thinking behind Felix, but the wage is very high. The cost is high. So I just don't think it was a priority. He's not the profile of forward Chelsea need. And don't forget, we've got Nkunku to come as well, who kind of is a 10, who can play wide left and likes to cut inside. So, there's a lot of reasons not to do it, way more reasons than to do it. And I'm sorry, I know a lot of Chelsea fans love Felix, but it's not aligned, unfortunately. And I think that even in the first place, I think both loans were a mistake. I think that they shouldn't have happened. They blocked pathways. They gave players a lack of minutes. Okay, Felix was pretty good, but it would maybe have been better to play Pulisic, because even though whatever you think about Pulisic, he's maybe not good enough for Chelsea, maybe he's not interested in staying much longer, but at least he would have played. At least that would have helped create a market, and you can sell him after he played 10, 15 games, and people would be like, well, he's been playing for Chelsea, he's just not quite at his best. So I think that was a mistake, because Felix has now absorbed a lot of minutes, and maybe Zakaria's absorbed some that Lewis Hall could have had in midfield. So as much as I like them both as players, I really do, honestly, but I just feel like when you have a big squad, give minutes to the ones you own. So that's my feeling.
Yeah, I saw some fan sentiment out there that Chelsea should not be taking on loans at this point in the club's kind of structure. Like, we have so many players coming up through Cobham. We have so many opportunities and such a big squad. To take on more players just seems wild, and especially players that you don't actually own, that you have no ability to kind of resell. So that makes a ton of sense. I mean, let's talk about Pulisic, since you brought him up, right? I mean, this is a player who had one goal last year, barely played, was in the World Cup, kind of was slightly injured coming back from that, but didn't have the major injury breakdown this year necessarily that he's had in previous years. Just wasn't favored, right? And so the obvious point of view is to say, oh, he's gone, but where? I mean, do you have any thoughts on what would make sense for him and what a reasonable fee would be?
He seems to always have a Serie A market for some reason. He's been looked at. I think, Juventus is the one that's been linked. ESPN wrote about that recently, and they were the team that wanted him last summer, had a look at him. They were offered in swaps and stuff like that. So I think that could be something that happens. I wonder if it'll be Serie A that he ends up in, but it's not really clear. I don't know how big the market is for him, and I don't think that he'll command a huge fee with not long left on his contract. So, yeah, Chelsea started to make a loss, but the funny way football accounting works is they can always book it as a profit because he only has to cover 1 year of his contract, the last year of his contract. So, I would only be estimating at this stage. But yeah, I think he will definitely leave and he wants to leave, and Chelsea don't really see a future for him. So it's all aligning that he goes.
Another one that is confirmed is Dujon Sterling has now left for Rangers. Obviously signed kind of his pre-contract agreement up in Scotland. So obviously not a major player for Chelsea. Hasn't really featured that much, but was always one that was on the fringes of potentially making it into the squad or not. Always featuring in preseason. Been with the club for a very long time. Any thoughts on Dujon Sterling leaving?
Yeah, I do have a lot of thoughts about it. I think he was one of the best players I've seen play for the academy. He was an absolute monster, bullying teams in the academy. Incredible footballer. Could have been a great wing back. It could have been the wing back for Conte that he needed. Could have been the one for Tuchel. But he had a lot of obstacles to overcome. He had really bad illness, then quite a bad injury as well, back to back. So the illness, it's not official what he had, but it's something quite unusual, not something you commonly see. Nothing to do with football, but he just got ill like anyone can. So yeah, he was ill for like a year, and it completely disrupted his career. So the fact he's getting a move to Rangers, and the fact he's rebuilt his career in the Championship is an incredible achievement. And I think we'll see him back in the Premier League someday. And the other thing is, from Chelsea's point of view, I think that there was a lot of respect behind the scenes, that Chelsea didn't put any like barriers in his way. He had an option in his contract. They could have used the option and asked for £1 million or something like that to sell him. But they were just like, look, we have so much respect for what you've achieved to come back, and you've given so much to our academy, won so many trophies as well in the academy as well. So they were just like, we're going to let you go. No problems. Like, well done. We're proud of you. And there's a lot of goodwill. And I think that's maybe a story people don't know about Dujon Sterling. And one we'll hear more about, I think, in the coming years when he does realise his potential, because I think he will. When you overcome something like this, you always end up getting to the top, don't you? So I think he could be back in the Premier League at a good level in the near future.
Obviously, wish him the best of luck in his new career journey. And yeah, I definitely hope that he ends up back in the Premier League someday. That would be awesome. Another one who might fit the showing a lot of respect category is Ruben Loftus-Cheek, right? We saw the very public goodbye during the Newcastle game. It was great to see that the fans kind of understood what that moment was, and probably was his last appearance on the pitch at Stamford Bridge. Naz, rumors out there that Milan are in for him, maybe £20 million or something like that. Would make a lot of sense for him, and I think the club is also. This is probably another one where he's been through so much, right? He's come up through the academy, he's worked his way through, had that terrible injury that I think they, whether they've said it out loud or not, probably felt really responsible for, playing on a turf pitch in Boston. What are your thoughts on Ruben Loftus-Cheek and where he might end up?
No, he's definitely a bit of a Chelsea legend, and he's a huge Chelsea man, loves the club, all this kind of stuff. So I think that the respect he got at Stamford Bridge was unbelievably, well due, and he deserved it. And he deserves, he's been around pretty much as Mount, so he deserves a lot of that love, I think, that Mount gets. So yeah, I think that Chelsea, ever since Thomas Tuchel left, I think the writing's been a little bit on the wall for Ruben. I think that Tuchel was a really big sort of proponent of him, and I think he was pushing him and all this kind of stuff. But I think since the big transfer splurge in January that as well, and sort of Chelsea tried to sell him in the last minute of January, it kind of put the writing on the wall for him that his career's over at Chelsea. I mean, he's always been sort of on the verge. You're always like, will he go on loan? What will he do? But I think that now maybe the penny's dropped as well for him, that he can stick around if he wants and play out the last year of his deal. Like, no one can force him to go, but maybe it's best that he takes his career and future in his own hands and sort of makes that move. And I think that that's sort of what's happened with him, is that he came off the pitch against Newcastle, and it looked like the penny had dropped for him, that finally this is it. I need to start moving on. I need to show my love now, but I need to start looking at the next step. And AC Milan have come in pretty strong. For me, I'm still questioning if they're actually going to do the deal, because there's all sorts of reasons. But the two biggest problems for AC Milan is the wages, and also they've got non-EU slots. So Brexit, England's no longer in the EU, right? So if you're an English player, it's harder to move to Italy, and they have a rule in Serie A, 2 non-EU players, and they're signing a Japanese player as well. So will they make Ruben their second non-EU player? Let's see. I'd like to see it, because Milan's been a good place for English players recently, but yeah, we'll see. And I think Chelsea are ready to sell him, and they would like to maybe use Ruben as an asset to boost the accounts before June 30th, when the latest set of accounts are due.
Sticking in midfield, lots of rumors that Kovacic is on his way to Manchester City, which, I think makes a ton of sense for a lot of different reasons. Has not been able to stay healthy at Chelsea. When he was healthy, he was a dynamic player in midfield, even getting a couple of uncharacteristic goals during his time at Chelsea. Played in the Champions League final, obviously, as a sub. Thoughts on his Chelsea tenure, and if this is truly the right time to kind of depart?
I think Chelsea will end up selling him. Really good player for Chelsea, I think, down the years. I don't think we could be too upset with paying 40 million to Real Madrid and what he's delivered in return.
Yep.
And he's really loved being at the club as well. I was one of the few people lucky enough to interview him. He doesn't do many interviews. And he was just sort of saying he absolutely loves his life in London. He's probably never felt more at home at a club. He's had a kid born here. He lives like right near the stadium, loves like being around Chelsea and around Chelsea. It's a great spot for footballers, and his family love it. So, yeah, I mean, it's with a heavy heart he'll probably leave, but it's been a tough season. Chelsea needs to cash in. He's older. He's got 1 year left on his deal. Doesn't feel like Chelsea made much effort to renew his contracts, if I'm honest. So I think that they just see it like, we're going to bring the average age down. If we have to renew his contract, he'll be on a massive wage and stuff like that. So let City take him. If they've got a vision for him, fair enough. And we'll just sort of try and cash in. So it's just a case of how much now. It looks like Chelsea are aiming for 35 million in the bank for him. But it says a lot about a player when Pep Guardiola tries to sign you, doesn't it? So it might come back to haunt Chelsea in the short term, but I think Chelsea are thinking long term here and thinking, let's push some of the younger guys and see if they can compete.
Two other ones that have been, I think, pretty widely expected departures in Ziyech and Aubameyang kind of round out the attack here. What's the market for these guys? I mean, it's obvious that they're on their way out. From my side of the world, I can't imagine what it's like from your side. I mean, where are we at with these guys?
Well, yeah, they both need to leave. They both need to get the offers in that they need. I think that's a lot of work on their side that needs doing, not necessarily Chelsea's side. So it looks like Aubameyang's going to get something. I think that he will get some offers. I don't know how soon into the process it'll be, but he's got like Saudi Arabia on the table. Then Barcelona love him. He wants to go to Barcelona most of all. He did well there before he joined Chelsea. Maybe he shouldn't have joined Chelsea if he did well there, but that's another story. Atletico Madrid and AC Milan like him as well, so he's got that. He's got a lot on the table. Ziyech has had some big offers, hasn't he? PSG actually should have got him on loan in January, but somehow Chelsea kept him. But that's another story. So it shows there's market for him there. And I think that, he's had Roma and AC Milan in the past looking at him, but those clubs never really made an offer. So I think he's just got to make sure that, he gets those offers in. And he's ripped up his agent. He's not working with the same agent anymore. He started doing it in-house. So let's see if he can find that move for himself that he needs. Don't forget, though, Ziyech has got 2 years left on his deal. So there is actually a small chance that he could end up on loan and sort of stay on Chelsea's books. So it's not what you want, but it could happen.
What about Callum Hudson-Odoi and kind of what is going on here? By all accounts, not the most productive loan at Leverkusen. Is still young. I think 23. Thoughts on him and what's next in his journey?
Callum Hudson-Odoi will almost certainly be transferred to a Premier League club, I think. Probably not for a huge fee, but I guess a decent sum. I think clubs like, I knew that Nottingham Forest were interested in the summer last year. He had a bit of other interest, Southampton, although they've gone down. So, he works with Steve Cooper, so it wouldn't surprise me if they came in. Steve Cooper used to be a youth coach with England, so Callum Hudson-Odoi produced some good football for him. He's been good for young players, but I think that maybe clubs see him as a bit of a gamble because he's had a bit of a rough time, and in his last few years, he didn't do very well on loan, like you said. He did okay, I think, but not enough minutes really at Leverkusen, and in a bit of injury, and Leverkusen sort of just cashed out on him as well because they were like, we're not going to buy him, so we're not going to play him. So that was kind of where he was at. So he's a bit unlucky, I think, Callum Hudson-Odoi. And I don't think his development's been handled great over the years. He's going to be sold. Premier League club, pretty much only to a Premier League club because they've got the money to buy him. And I think he needs to take sort of 2 steps back to make 1 step forward. So he'd probably drop down to a mid-table to lower table team and see if he can get back to where he should be. Because honestly, unbelievable footballer, absolutely incredible, probably the best academy player I've ever seen. And I'm comparing him with great players, but he's just not lived up to the potential yet.
Well, let's do the defender grouping: Aspi, Trevoh, Koulibaly, Thiago Silva. Who is staying? Who is going? Obviously, you can't have 8 defenders in your back line. So, thoughts and feelings on any of those options?
Yeah, I've written about this recently, but Chelsea have too many defenders. Like, if you think about, they'll play a back 4 next season, probably under Pochettino, maybe a bit of back 3 as well. But back 4 is Pochettino's favoured option. And they've got 3 right backs with Malo Augusto coming in. Levi Colwill is going to come into defence as well. So it makes 6 centre backs. And Chelsea insist, and they've just rejected a bid from Brighton. They insist they want to keep Levi. So they want to keep Levi Colwill, fine. They want to keep Wesley Fofana, fine. And they want to keep Benoit Badiashile, okay. You've got to try and make Badiashile and Levi Colwill work together as well, by the way, because they're both left-footed, left-sided centre-back specialists. So can they coexist together? I think there's concern there, but we're going to try. I think that's where Chelsea's position is. Then Thiago Silva wants to stay. Chelsea pretty open to selling Koulibaly, but he wants to stay, so that's awkward. So it leaves Trevor in an awkward position where, they might end up selling Trevor Chalobah. Now, that's fine. He'll find a good club. There's interest there. There always has been loads and loads of interest in him. But yeah, it feels like there's a necessity to slim down. But even with 5 centre-backs, 2 right-backs and 2 top left-backs, and then you're thinking, where does Lewis Hall fit in as well? He's been playing left-back, but you've got Cucurella and Chilwell. So there's a huge slim down operation to do there. And I think it's going to be tricky because, especially at centre-back, every single one of those players, including Levi Colwill, considers himself an automatic starter. So they want to play 20, probably 30 games next season, 34, 35 maybe. And there's no Champions League. So there's only going to be 38 games in a league, and then however far you get in the cup. So it's a really, really difficult conundrum. And I think it's going to be very hard to solve. I think Chalobah is the easiest fall guy. And then also Azpilicueta, who's a legend and had a big send-off at Stamford Bridge. And I'm sure he would be interested to stay, but maybe he takes his career into his own hands and takes that step. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there because it needs to slim down. And for me, it's not clear, absolutely not clear right now what's going to happen.
You've talked previously about Mendy and being probably the easier option to move a goalkeeper. Beyond that, we just talked through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 players. Who else is on the list? I mean, obviously that's an incredible amount of players to potentially move on. Thoughts on anyone else?
I think like Lukaku is going to be interested. Are they gonna keep him, or are they gonna move him on? I could see him coming back on pre-season. I mean, this guy's in the Champions League final as well. What if he scores the winner against Man City, which we all hope for, by the way? They win the Champions League, so that could happen. And then I think Inter would react emotionally the way football is in Italy. Sometimes they would probably go, "Let's loan him for another season." Which would be a pretty good outcome, I think, for Chelsea if they could have that. But at the same time, they've got to keep your options open and maybe bring him back. So I think it is what it is with Lukaku now. It's just seeing what happens, and can he switch his mindset to play for Chelsea again, who he's damaged the relationship with the fans. And I think that a lot of fans don't want him back at Chelsea because they saw him behaving badly last time he was here. So that's going to be fascinating, that scenario. So yeah, Cucurella's not, I don't think he's an absolute guaranteed to stay. It'd be interested to see what happens there. I mean, Lewis Hall would be a great backup for Chilwell, wouldn't he? If they could pivot and push Hall and maybe move Cucurella on, that would be interesting, even on loan, maybe. And then you could see what his value is. Maybe he absolutely kills it on loan somewhere and you can sell him for a good sum the year after. So there's going to be some awkward ones and those kind of ones are going to go late because clubs are going to push Chelsea to the limit, and also Chelsea are going to be looking for solutions all the way through. The ones they're selling now are the ones that have big markets, Kovacic, Mount, stuff like that. But later down the line, it's going to be those expensive guys that clubs in other leagues want, but they just want to try and get a few million off it. The Premier League has loads of money these days and other leagues have not a lot. So Chelsea have those kind of dilemmas to work with. Do we let them go for cheap elsewhere, or do we sell them to a rival? And that's kind of where they are now.
Last couple minutes here, because these are not as important, but they are important. Incomings, obviously you mentioned Nkunku earlier. Loans returning potentially for Colwell and Maatsen as well, who both had stellar seasons out on loan. It's pretty clear the needs are goalkeeper, striker, DM. There's plenty of talk about each one of these positions. Do you have any notes that you'd like to share on striker, DM, or goalkeeper as to where Chelsea might be looking this summer?
Yeah, well, DM is interesting because there's been a big push on Ugarte, a bit of talks lately, and it seems like Chelsea aren't going to offer as big a wages as PSG. There's a big wage structure change at Chelsea, and that's another reason why Mount maybe is struggling, because Chelsea have a lot of players on the high wages, and can they put Mount up there? Can they put the new signings up there? How many players can you put on the highest salary? Every club has a limit on how many players they put on the high salaries. And maybe Chelsea have already maxed out a lot of those ones. But with midfielder, though, I think that everyone forgets a little bit about Andre Santos, who's a new signing, and Chelsea signed him to play in the first team. And the only reason he didn't was because he didn't get his visa. So where's he going to fit in it? I think he's been amazing again in the under-20s, which we're going to touch upon. But he is expected to come back in pre-season. So can he take a slot and maybe calm Chelsea down and sort of sign in midfielder? I think they're going to maybe wait and have a look at him and see what Pochettino thinks and see where to go from there, because it sounds like he's going to get his visa now. He's played for Brazil and achieved a lot. He's played in the top flight in Brazil as well now. I think that there's a lot of other options. We know they like Rice, but he probably won't go to Chelsea, too expensive. Caicedo, looks like he's leaving for someone, and Chelsea absolutely love him. Romeo Lavia, just been relegated with Southampton, cheaper option, but is he good enough? Let's see. A good player though, but young and needs a bit of time, and is that a bit of a risk with where Chelsea are at? Striker, it's not a great market for strikers, so I think you've seen some reports this week where saying Chelsea would be happy to play Nkunku up front and things like that, and you'll probably hear about Lukaku coming back in the next week with the Champions League final coming up. So I think that there's sort of this acceptance that Osimhen is the great one that people want, and then Kane, and then you're sort of working quite far down the list after that point. There's people like the Atalanta striker Højlund, he could be an option. Man United are interested in him, but you're really going down in quality when you get to those kind of players. So is it worth just waiting for a top striker to emerge and maybe Chelsea to be in a stronger position to sign one? So I think that's going to be a bit of a dilemma at striker. And then goalkeeper, I think they'll get a goalkeeper done because the market is, as bad as the market is for a striker right now, it is great for goalkeepers. If you want a goalkeeper now, go for a goalkeeper. You've got Andre Onana, very gettable. You've got David Raya, very gettable. Kobel from Dortmund seems to be gettable. So there is a really good market around goalkeepers that I'd say is worth trying to get into. Loads of goalies going to move this summer, so it'll be interesting to see. And Chelsea will be competing against Man United and Tottenham for goalkeepers because they want goalies, and I think some of the other big clubs in Europe do as well. So it could be a very hot market, that.
Of those three positions, what do you think is most important for Chelsea to nail down right now?
I think strike is the most important, but at the same time the hardest to do. So it's tricky. But I think just try and improve however you can. So if you can't get a striker, fine, but make sure the other positions are good. And I think there are solutions as well in Chelsea's squad, in Chelsea's academy, on the loan list. There are options to fixing problems. So it's not a massive necessity, but ideally you would want those signings. That's kind of how I feel about it.
You did report that the teenage wonder kid, Adam Bojang, is apparently being monitored by Chelsea, Palace, and Wolves. 6'3" striker has really impressed at the Under-20 World Cup in Argentina for Gambia. What are your thoughts on this player? I mean, this is a name that I haven't heard before. And it's obviously, I think every time one of these major youth international tournaments happen, just like it does at the men's level, you get standout players, and he seems to be one that's really piquing interest.
Yeah, Chelsea have guys watching these players at the tournament, and I think Joe Shields is one of the guys who's out there right now. And yeah, they're watching him. He's an outstanding talent in Africa. He's almost perfect for Chelsea in many ways because for what Chelsea want for the future, they want to win these races for these wonder kids who they project will become top players eventually. They probably need a lot of development and stuff like that. But the problem for Chelsea now is they have so many players that the pathways, they don't look like they're there. So the fact that they're in negotiations with Strasbourg could almost help you sign this player. And this is just an example. Adama Boyang, he's one example, but Chelsea's scouting network is excellent at the minute. It's probably one of the things that's best about the club is that they can identify the talent, but can they find the pathways? That's the biggest difficulty right now. And the reason they might not be able to is because they're at a competitive disadvantage compared to Man City, because Man City owns 10 clubs. So Man City could take this player and put him at any one of their 10 clubs and he'd get development time. So it doesn't matter that they have a great 25-man squad in the Premier League. They can just put him somewhere else and eventually he comes back. So that's what Chelsea are trying to do. And I think that Chelsea won't win this race for this player unless they have that structure in place, especially because he's a striker and Chelsea have a lot of young strikers. With David Datro Fofana, we've not mentioned, but he's another one that could block his Royer. Yeah, many, many options at front, just not maybe that superstar striker you want. So yeah, this is probably the disadvantage Chelsea have in this race, but it's a great example to show why Chelsea want a multi-club structure. And actually, Crystal Palace are one of the clubs in the race. They've got that set up. They also have a multi-club. Brighton have a multi-club. So you're competing against not just Man City who have this in place, but Brighton, Red Bull. And I think Leipzig are one of the clubs interested, but they could just put him out in Salzburg, which they probably will. So you've got all this that you're up against, and Chelsea and other clubs are at a disadvantage for not copying that model. And I think that's what the ownership group now are trying to do. They're trying to make these small improvements that maybe don't matter to fans, but they will matter in the long term for big results.
So last thing I want to cover off on, actually second to last thing I want to cover off on is the Under-20 World Cup. It's been a banger of a tournament for Chelsea players. Andre Santos in Brazil are through due to his 2-goal heroics. Cassidy, obviously, unfortunately, knocking out England with a late penalty yesterday, and then Gaga Slonina is playing lights out for the U.S. under-20 team. Are there any other call-outs or any points of reference that you want to make here for those who are not covering the tournament with as much detail as maybe journalist friends are?
Yeah, I just would say, I think the tournament's shown that Chelsea's scouting, it's been a terrible season, but the scouting's been excellent. Look at those players, all doing brilliant, some of the best at their countries and on all this. So it just shows you that Chelsea have the best of most of the big nations coming through their system. We also got Chuck Wamaker and Harvey as well. Many great players. So I think that what it shows is that, Santos is an absolute, he's way ahead of his age group. He should not be playing at this level ever again. This is the last chance and he should now be a senior footballer for the rest of his career. Absolutely. And it's interesting to see if he's ready for Chelsea, because he's ready for a good level of football. But is he ready for Chelsea? That is the big question. And I'm going to try and get that in pre-season.
Yeah, I mean, I guess based on everything that we hear, all the highlight tapes that you see, I mean, I, of course, don't watch Vasco da Gama very often or at all. But this seems like a player that would be incredibly useful within a squad, even if he's not a nailed-on starter or anything, which he almost certainly wouldn't be, right? I mean, but based on what we know of Poch, fitness, his previous midfield profiles, there couldn't be a match more made in heaven potentially than these two, right?
Yeah, and he looks like he can play with Enzo as well, which would be brilliant just because of physical profile. And I think Enzo needs that. He needs a partner. I think Frank Lampard was saying that Enzo needs a bit of physicality alongside him in one of our last encounters. So, yeah, I think he's a good fit. I think Casadai's massive, great, big player, but he wants to go forward. So he's more of a number 8. You need to give him some license, whereas Santos, he can hold. So those two have been top. And I've not seen as much of Casadai, actually, weirdly, because even though he plays at Reading, just not seen much of Reading. But that 6-month loan has been excellent for him. And Chelsea have handled their development okay, actually. And even Slonina, I looked at it initially and I was like, why is Chelsea's academy playing a guy who's played in the MLS, who is played for his national team already? But when I've sort of gone into that subject, they have this sort of new idea where they don't mind having players for 6 months to acclimatise. So Slonina is just getting used to the UK, getting used to England, used to Chelsea, and they just thought, let's show him the level of some of the players around here, and maybe he'll go on loan still. But they thought that 6 months actually was very, very good for Slonina. So that it might look like they're wasting their time, some of these players, but I think Chelsea doesn't believe they are. So, I think that it's interesting. Even Casadei did an interview as well with the Italian media, because he's the captain of his team as well as top scorer in the tournament and just all-round legend for Italy. He did an interview with the biggest newspaper, and he said that he expects to come back in pre-season and he's going to try and take his chance. So, wow, it's going to be interesting. But how big is this plane? And that's my only concern is Pochettino needs to get a group of players together. There's already a 32-man squad. Chelsea's pre-season group last season was 28 players. If you're adding in Casadei, Andre Santos, Levi Colwill, Lukaku, maybe, Hudson-Odoi, if he's not been sold, like, how big is this plane? Like, they've got to sell players. They've got to sell players before. And I know that pre-season starts almost the day that Pochettino gets back. It's very early July. So they need to get rid of these players before there's a problem, because they can't take them all to America.
I guess these three players seem to have a little bit of something to them personality-wise, right? And I think that this is not, you're taking a flyer on a young player because they have a really quick burst in the final third or something like that. These guys all have captain, material about them. Two of them already are. Gaga's been a captain for that team before. Is that the sort of not only player but personality that you think Chelsea are going after?
Yeah.
At that youth level, I mean.
Yeah, I think so. And they're just obviously the best players at their youth level as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, it's like they're playing they're like playing with kids. It looks like that. It looks like adults playing with kids when they play football. So yeah, and Gaga can vouch for his personality because I've interviewed him, and what a character. And he's been around Chelsea a lot, and he's already shook my hand and sort of just, when you see somebody projecting great behaviour, that's what he does. He's absolutely unbelievably mature for his age as well. Very, very excited about him. But he, as a goalkeeper, he needs experience. He probably doesn't need as much as most goalies his age, but I think he maybe needs a loan himself just as a goalie. Maybe Championship. It would be brilliant to see him in the Championship. Great shot stopper. Let's see what else he can do as well. Just needs some minutes under his belt. Some big strikers trying to bully him, and maybe in not too long of a time he can come back and be Chelsea's number one, which is his ambition.
All right. Last thing, and it's an important thing. You've reported Chelsea agree for a charity match for Ukraine to be played at Stamford Bridge in early August. Mudryk and, of course, Zinchenko both involved in this game. Can you talk a little bit about this? I mean, this is obviously, something that, for whatever reason, has kind of fallen off of a lot of radars. That, there's still a huge conflict happening in a country not too far from where you are, right? Just give us a little bit of detail as to what's happening and why.
Yeah. It's a game for Ukraine, raising money for charity for Ukraine. Even Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, is behind this. So it is big. It might not feel big in the Chelsea universe, but Chelsea have offered up the stadium, which is really nice because maybe a stadium hire is a huge sum of money, and then you get all those people in a stadium, and then you can start raising money and funds for causes, which is what happens. And Chelsea have been brilliant to do this. So, Zinchenko's a driver. Mikhailo Mudryk has good say around Chelsea because the owners really believe in him and think he's going to be a top player. So they want him to feel comfortable, and I'm sure that's part of it, and was discussed even maybe on his transfer. I mean, it was a huge deal in Ukraine that this guy was leaving the league and coming during wartime. And also, do we think enough about Mudryk and the war and maybe how he feels? Sometimes we probably don't. We forget that side of it because It is people losing people, and it's a brutal war. So the cause is excellent. It's really well done for the people getting involved. Zinchenko's been really good on it. The Arsenal defender has been brilliant this season as well. And also, we've got to say, Shevchenko, former Chelsea striker, best ever Ukrainian player. He's massively involved. He lives in London. He's had really difficult circumstances with his family being stuck in Ukraine and stuff like that. So, it's a massive thing. And I've actually lost a friend as well who used to cover the Premier League, who was also working as a war reporter out in Ukraine, and he got hit by Russian rockets. So the danger is absolutely huge, and it's a great cause, and to donate to that, and people are still suffering, and I know it's hard to sort of focus on because it's been going on for such a long time, but people are still suffering, and it's a great thing. And these players that are from Ukraine that are carrying on, they want to give back because they're getting to live their dreams playing football, but they need to be ambassadors for the country and the whole of Europe. We're not that far away from it. So yeah, we've got to still think about Ukraine and try and help them win this war, because if they lose it, it's not worth thinking about, really.
Couldn't agree more, Naz. And obviously sorry for the loss of your friend as part of this ridiculous conflict that's happening. I think somber note to end on, obviously, but one that we are going to end on. Thank you for your time today, Naz. I'm sure we will be speaking many more times as we go throughout the summer as things progress. We only talked about 140 different things today, so lots of loose ends to tie up and such. So appreciate that. Appreciate all of you, Chelsea fans. Thank you for listening. And until next time, you know what to do. Keep the blue flag flying high.